So imagine your brain is like a really high-end computer.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And you are sitting in this critical, super high-stakes meeting. Your boss is staring directly at you from across the table.
Oh, that is the worst feeling, just all eyes on you.
Right. And you're halfway through articulating this genuinely brilliant point, and then, without warning, your mental hard drive just completely crashes.
Like a total system failure.
Exactly. You just freeze.
Yeah.
And the silence in the room stretches out for what feels like, I don't know, hours. You can physically feel the heat rising in your face.
Oh, yeah. We have all been there. It is a universal experience.
We really have. But here is the truly fascinating double standard of that exact moment. When a native speaker pauses mid-thought and like stares up at the ceiling, we automatically assume they are being deeply thoughtful.
Right. We think they're just pondering the vast complexities of the universe or whatever.
Yeah. Like they are searching for the absolute perfect, most eloquent word to finish their sentence.
They are perceived as contemplative, deliberate. The silence actually works in their favor. It kind of creates this sense of anticipation.
But then when you are speaking a language that isn't your native tongue, or frankly, even if you are just speaking your native language under intense environmental pressure.
Which happens all the time, honestly.
Right. That exact same pause feels entirely different. You do not feel thoughtful.
You feel exposed.
Exposed, yes.
Yeah.
You feel like you are failing in real time, right in front of everyone. And that silence feels like this giant spotlight just highlighting your incompetence.
Well, from a psychological standpoint, it is the absolute definition of a cognitive system failure. The perceived stakes basically warp your sense of time.
Yeah, so 3 seconds feels like an eternity.
Exactly. 3 seconds of hesitation suddenly feels like an agonizing eternity.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking the psychology, the neuroscience, and the hidden linguistics of speaking under pressure.
It is such a crucial topic for anyone who has to communicate professionally.
It really is. So if you have ever felt that panic, this exploration is absolutely for you. We're going to figure out exactly how to buy time during those terrifying mental blankouts.
And we will break down the mechanics of how to permanently fix those stubborn, deeply ingrained grammar errors, too.
Right, the ones you logically know you shouldn't be making. Plus, most importantly, we are going to dismantle the incredibly toxic perfectionism that is probably holding back your ability to truly connect with people.
Because the answer to that double standard, why native hesitation looks smart and pressured hesitation feels like a catastrophic failure, it really comes down to understanding 2 specific mechanisms.
And those are?
What the sources call auditory loading screens and fossilization.
Okay, auditory loading screens. I love that term.
Yeah.
But before we get to the heavy neuroscience of a mental crash, let's look at the flip side. What happens when things are going perfectly?
Oh, that's a good place to start.
Yeah. So there's this concept known as the schwa vowel, the lazy vowel.
Schwa, it's fascinating.
If you lean into the natural, relaxed rhythm of English, you basically playfully punch the stress on the important syllables, right? You let the rest of the vowels degrade into that lazy sound. So say you were at the grocery store and you just effortlessly ask where to find the bunan ooze.
Bunan ooze, perfect example. Phonetically, the schwa is so interesting because it is the sound your vocal tract makes when it is completely at rest.
Like zero effort.
Literally zero muscular effort to produce. When you prioritize the rhythm of a word over its precise dictionary spelling, you are aligning with how spoken English actually functions in the wild.
And the result of saying bunan ooze is that the clerk understands you instantly.
Immediately. There's no friction.
And you experience this amazing rush of confidence because you are manipulating the natural music of the language, and it just works. But that grocery store confidence is incredibly fragile, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It can vanish in an instant.
You can go from confidently chatting in the produce aisle on Sunday to walking into that high-pressure team meeting on Monday morning, and suddenly your vocal tract just tenses up. You are a completely different speaker.
That's because the environmental pressure alters your cognitive load. In the grocery store, the stakes are practically zero.
Right. If you mispronounce a fruit, nothing happens.
Exactly. Nobody cares. But in the boardroom, the stakes are perceived as tied to your professional survival, your status, your intelligence, your overall competence.
So your brain treats it like a life or death situation.
It does. That fear triggers a physiological response. Cortisol floods your system, which immediately restricts access to your prefrontal cortex.
And that's the part of your brain responsible for complex language formulation, right?
Yes, exactly. So it literally shuts down the language center.
So that relates directly to the scenario of losing your train of thought entirely. Your prefrontal cortex gets flooded with cortisol, and you experience what feels exactly like a computer's blue screen of death.
That was a perfect analogy. A total, unrecoverable system failure right in the middle of a sentence. And the immediate physical response to that internal blue screen is almost always to freeze. You just stop talking and stand there in dead silence.
It is a literal freeze response. It's born of the exact same evolutionary mechanics as fight or flight. And that silence is what makes the situation so agonizing.
Because silence is bad.
Well, in English conversation, silence does not simply mean nothing is happening. Silence actually acts as an aggressive vacuum.
Okay, let's break down the physics of a conversation then. Because linguists view conversation not just as an exchange of pure information, but as a shared, highly structured rhythm.
Yes, very structured.
Almost like a jazz performance, right? There's a specific cadence to turn-taking.
Oh, absolutely. In English, the acceptable gap between one person finishing a sentence and the other person starting is incredibly brief.
How brief are we talking?
Often measured in just a few hundred milliseconds. It is lightning fast. Wow. So when you suddenly introduce like 3 full seconds of dead silence,
Yeah.
you aren't just pausing, you are breaking the rhythm of the entire song.
Exactly. And the listener's brain, which operates as a constant prediction machine, inherently freaks out and tries to fill that vacuum.
Because they need the rhythm to continue.
Precisely. Because you are no longer giving them any rhythmic or auditory cues, they assume one of two things.
Which are?
Either they assume you have yielded the floor and it is their turn to speak, which obviously disrupts your point entirely.
Right, they just talk over you.
Or, much worse, they assume you have run out of ideas and simply do not know what you are talking about.
Oh man, that is the worst case scenario.
It is. The void forces them to draw a conclusion, and under pressure, that conclusion is rarely charitable to the speaker.
Wait, I don't buy that silence is an absolute vacuum that always signals failure, though. I mean, think of a CEO giving a keynote address or a great trial lawyer in a courtroom.
Okay.
They will make this heavy, profound point, and then they'll just stand there in total silence, and it makes them look brilliant. They're using silence, and it isn't a vacuum. It's a weapon.
That is a crucial distinction, yes. But it comes down to the mechanics of control.
Control.
Yes. A dramatic pause is a highly intentional act. The speaker using a dramatic pause is still actively holding the room.
Oh, I see.
They are maintaining strong, steady eye contact. Their posture is grounded. They are utilizing silence as a highlighter to underscore the point they just delivered.
Okay, so it sounds like the difference between driving a manual transmission car and intentionally easing onto the brakes to let everyone admire the view,
Right.
versus suddenly dropping the clutch in the wrong gear and violently stalling the engine out in the middle of the highway.
That is an incredibly accurate way to look at it, actually. The blue screen silence is an engine stall. It is not born of intention at all. It is born of panic.
Because you didn't plan for it.
Right. When you hit that mental wall and your brain crashes, your body language instantly betrays you.
Your shoulders tense up.
Yes, your eyes dart away to look for an escape route. You look physically uncomfortable. You have been entirely stripped of control.
So you are no longer using silence to underscore a point.
No. The silence is loudly broadcasting a breakdown in your cognitive processing.
Okay, so if the goal is to avoid stalling the engine on the highway, how do we fix it? Because the most surprising revelation from the sources isn't that native speakers have better brains.
They definitely do not.
Right. Native speakers lose their train of thought all the time. They forget what they're saying, they get distracted by someone walking past the window, their brains blue screen constantly.
Yeah.
But they rarely stall the car.
They don't stall the car because they intuitively understand how to mask the processing delay.
And how do they do that?
Well, linguists refer to the tools they use as discourse markers and fillers.
Or, to keep with our computer analogy, auditory loading screens.
I love that phrase, auditory loading screens.
Think about what your laptop does when it needs a moment to process a massive video file. It doesn't just go pitch black, right?
No, it gives you a little spinning rainbow wheel.
Exactly, or a progress bar. That visual cue is the computer communicating with you, basically saying, hey, I am still here, I haven't crashed, I am working extremely hard in the background, just give me a second.
And native speakers do the exact same thing with their mouths. When their prefrontal cortex needs time to find a specific vocabulary word or structure a complex dependent clause, they deploy an auditory loading screen. It prevents the conversational rhythm from collapsing entirely.
Now, when we bring up fillers, the first thing that jumps into my mind is saying,
Gradually.
and I have to point out, every single public speaking class I have ever taken, every Toastmasters Club, every corporate communication workshop they treat, like a literal virus.
Oh, they despise them.
Can I tell you to eradicate them completely because they make you sound uneducated, unprepared, and anxious?
We have to completely debunk that myth right now. The idea that are inherently bad is an artificial rigid rule. It was created for very formalized, scripted public speaking.
Like giving a TED Talk or something.
Exactly. It has almost no bearing on natural, spontaneous human interaction. In dynamic conversation, these microfillers serve a vital cognitive and social function.
They are the spinning wheel.
They are the spinning wheel. They signal to the listener, hey, I am still formulating my thought. Do not interrupt me. The floor is still mine.
Right. But while, are the basic entry-level spinning wheels, highly proficient speakers use much more sophisticated software, don't they?
They do. They use longer phrases to buy themselves significant processing time.
Not just a microsecond, but 3 or 4 solid seconds of cognitive runway.
And in the middle of a high-pressure corporate meeting, 3 or 4 seconds is a massive amount of processing time for your brain. It allows your cortisol levels to stabilize just enough to regain access to your vocabulary.
It is a luxury vacation for your working memory.
It really is.
Some of the best examples of these sophisticated loading screens are phrases that sound completely natural, like, well, the thing is, or to be perfectly honest with you, or, yeah, it's funny you should ask that.
Those are perfect examples.
There was one specific example from the text that completely reframed my understanding of professional conversations. Think about when a speaker is asked a really tough question, and they reply with, that's a really great question. Let me think about that for a second.
Yes. Let's analyze the psychology behind that specific phrase.
Usually you hear that and your ego strokes itself. You think, wow, I asked such a piercing, brilliant question. The speaker is genuinely impressed by my intellect.
Right. But the reality is entirely different.
It is almost never a compliment. It is a tactical deployment of a loading screen. It is just a delay mechanism.
It is a highly strategic maneuver. By stating, that's a really great question, let me think about that for a second, the speaker accomplishes 3 critical things simultaneously.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, they explicitly maintain control of the floor. They are commanding the room to wait.
Power move.
Second, it projects immense competence. Only a deeply confident, secure professional publicly announces that they are going to take a moment to consider a complex issue before speaking. It mimics the intentionality of the dramatic pause we discussed earlier.
And thirdly, it gives their brain a chance to frantically organize the actual answer while the mouth is operating on pure autopilot, producing this heavily practiced modular chunk of language that requires 0 active thought.
Yes.
The deeper processing centers of the brain are running at absolute maximum capacity in the background, just structuring the grammar for the actual response.
It splits the cognitive load beautifully. The mouth maintains the social rhythm of the conversation while the brain handles the complex data retrieval.
That is so smart.
The goal of becoming a fluid speaker isn't to somehow miraculously never hesitate. That is biologically impossible. The goal is to dress your hesitation in a tailored suit. You must actively control the pause rather than letting the pause control you.
I love that. Dress your hesitation in a tailored suit. Let's actually put this into practice right now for you listening. I want you to imagine that boardroom scenario again.
Okay, setting the theme.
The spotlight is on you. The CEO asks a complex question about your quarterly data, and you feel the blue screen coming on. Your mind goes totally blank. But this time, instead of freezing and creating that vacuum of dead silence, you are going to deploy a loading screen.
Try it right now.
Try saying this phrase out loud right now, wherever you are. If you are washing dishes, say it to the sink. If you are driving, say it to the windshield. Speak it with actual authority.
Go ahead.
That's a good point. Let me think about how to phrase this.
Now, notice how that feels in your chest.
Yeah. If you lean into the psychology of those words, you can physically feel the shift in power dynamics. You are no longer a victim of a mental blankout. You are actively managing the room's expectations.
You have taken a moment of sheer panic and alchemized it into a demonstration of thoughtful leadership.
You have solved the problem of the engine stall. But That leads us directly into the second major breakdown that happens under pressure.
The dreaded grammar slip.
Yes. Let's say you didn't use a loading screen. You panicked. You sat in the dead silence. And then, in a desperate, flailing attempt to break the tension, you just blurted out a sentence. And in doing so, you made a terrible, fundamental grammar mistake.
It is incredibly common, even among very advanced speakers. High stress does crazy things to our output.
A brutally relatable example is a speaker who panics and blurts out, "He don't have the file," instead of saying he doesn't have the file.
Oh, that stings.
Right. The agonizing part of this isn't just the mistake, it's the aftermath. The speaker absolutely knows the rule. They have known how to conjugate a third-person singular verb since they were in elementary school. It's day one basic English.
They know it perfectly.
Yet in the heat of the moment, their mouth just betrays them. Why do we consistently make the same fundamental errors when we speak, even when we hold a perfect understanding of the rules on paper?
To understand the mechanics of this betrayal, we have to look at a linguistic and neurological concept called fossilization.
I hear that word, and I immediately think of dinosaur bones trapped in amber.
The metaphor is surprisingly accurate, actually. Think about how a biological fossil is formed. It starts as organic, malleable matter. But over a long period of time, under specific environmental pressures, it calcifies.
It turns to rigid stone.
Exactly. In language acquisition, fossilization refers to a very specific neurological hardening. It occurs when a learner makes a linguistic error, perhaps a verb conjugation or a specific phonetic mispronunciation, and they are never corrected.
So they just keep doing it.
They continue to make that exact same mistake repeatedly for years.
And because no one ever stops them to correct it, the mistake just hardens into stone.
Yes. It transitions from being a simple, correctable error into a permanent fixture lodged deep within their procedural memory.
Okay, let's unpack the difference between declarative memory and procedural memory, because I think this is the absolute key to why traditional language learning fails us in real life.
It is the absolute core of the issue.
If declarative memory is knowing how a bicycle works, like knowing about the chain, the pedals, and the physics of balance, procedural memory is the actual physical act of riding the bicycle without falling over.
Precisely. Knowing the grammar rule on paper, knowing that the pronoun he requires the verb doesn't, resides in your declarative memory. It is explicit, conscious knowledge.
You can easily access it when you are calmly taking a multiple choice test.
Right. Procedural memory, however, is muscle memory. It is governed by entirely different structures in the brain, primarily the basal ganglia and the cerebellum. It relies on unconscious, automatic neural pathways that your brain builds to perform complex physical tasks without requiring active thought.
And speaking a language fluently is an incredibly complex physical task. You are coordinating your diaphragm, your vocal cords, your tongue, and your lips in a matter of milliseconds.
Exactly. When you say he don't, your mouth is literally executing a muscle memory routine. The brain has built a neural superhighway for the incorrect phrase.
But why? Why build a superhighway for a mistake?
The reason the brain does this is fascinating. The human brain is ruthlessly efficient, and its primary evolutionary objective in communication is simply to survive the interaction and transfer the necessary data.
So think about what happens when you say he don't have the file. It sounds grammatically incorrect, yes. But does the listener understand you?
Absolutely. The meaning is perfectly clear. The file is missing.
The data transfer was a success.
And because the listener understood, your brain registers a biological win. It says, excellent, I communicated the point. I survived the social interaction.
Wow.
Because the communication was successful, the brain sees absolutely no biological or practical incentive to expend massive amounts of energy rebuilding that neural pathway to fix a minor grammatical quirk.
It just paves over the existing path, making it faster, more automatic, and harder to break for the next time.
Exactly.
It's like walking across a grassy quad on a college campus. The paved sidewalk is the grammatically correct route, but it takes a little longer. So day after day, people cut across the grass.
A classic desire path.
Right. Eventually, they were a dirt path right through the middle. That dirt path is the grammar mistake. It's technically wrong, but it gets you to your destination faster. The brain just takes the dirt path because it works.
That is a perfect illustration of how procedural memory optimizes for efficiency over accuracy.
But wait, if I completely understand the grammar rule in my declarative memory, if I can sit down with a workbook right now and fill in the blank perfectly every single time, why can't I just consciously think about the workbook exercise before I open my mouth?
It seems logical, right?
Yeah. Why can't I force my conscious brain to block my mouth from taking the dirt path?
Because you are vastly underestimating the cognitive load of a live conversation. Declarative memory is incredibly slow. It requires conscious, deliberate, sequential thought.
And procedural memory is fast.
Procedural memory is lightning fast. In a fast-paced, high-stakes meeting, your brain is already juggling an immense cognitive load. You are monitoring your boss's micro-expressions, interpreting the tone of the room, planning your next 3 arguments, and regulating your own physiological anxiety.
You are doing a million things at once.
If you try to pause all of those critical background processes to consciously access a grammar workbook rule from your declarative memory before every single sentence, your cognitive load will instantly max out.
What happens?
You will stutter, your speech rate will drop to a glacial pace, and you will almost certainly trigger the exact blue screen of death we'd just learned to avoid. Declarative memory is practically useless in the chaotic heat of spontaneous conversation.
So you can't just think your way out of it.
You fundamentally cannot think your way out of a muscle memory problem.
You cannot think your way out of a muscle memory problem. Okay, so if workbooks and grammar drills won't stop me from taking the dirt path, how do we smash the fossil? How do we break that dinosaur bone?
This brings us to a massively influential concept in linguistics developed by a researcher named Richard Schmidt. It is known as the noticing hypothesis.
Schmidt's crucial discovery was that you cannot acquire a new language feature. And more importantly, you cannot fix a broken, fossilized feature unless you consciously notice the gap between what you are currently saying and what a native or highly proficient speaker is saying.
It sounds deceptively simple on the surface, but the true mechanics of the noticing hypothesis lie entirely in the timing of when that noticing occurs.
Because my immediate reaction to that is, but I do notice my mistakes. I notice them all the time.
We all do.
Think about the person who said he don't in the meeting. They walked out of the boardroom, got to the elevator, replayed the tape in their head, and cringed so hard they wanted to melt into the floor. They definitely noticed it.
But that noticing is entirely retroactive. It happens after the physical act of speech has concluded.
And according to the science, noticing the mistake after the fact, in a wave of hallway embarrassment, is neurologically useless.
It serves only to punish your ego and increase your anxiety for the next meeting. It does absolutely nothing to alter the basal ganglia. It doesn't change your procedural memory one bit.
So when do you have to notice it to actually rewrite the code?
To change procedural memory, the conscious awareness must occur precisely before or during the physical act of speaking.
During the speech?
Yes. You have to intercept the neural signal while it is actively traveling down that dirt path. You have to drag that fossilized habit out of the dark, unconscious realm of muscle memory and force it into the bright, harsh light of conscious awareness right as your mouth is forming the words.
Okay, but how on earth is that practically possible? As you just explained, our cognitive load is already maxed out during a meeting. We are stressed. We are just trying to survive the interaction.
It's true.
How are we supposed to suddenly become hyper-aware of a tiny grammatical mechanic in the middle of all that chaos without crashing the system?
By utilizing absolute constraint, you have to set what is called a noticing trap.
A noticing trap.
The single most important rule of setting this trap is that you cannot try to fix all your mistakes at once. If you try to monitor your pronunciation, your prepositions, your verb conjugations, and your vocabulary all simultaneously, your brain will freeze.
Right.
You must choose exactly one single fossilized mistake.
Just one.
Just one. Let's stick with our example. For an entire week, your one and only linguistic goal in life is to fix the third-person singular verb. He doesn't versus he don't.
Okay.
You must give yourself radical permission to ignore every single other mistake you make. You essentially tell your brain, I don't care if I mess up every preposition today. I don't care if I mispronounce a dozen words. Every time I talk about a third person this week, my only job is to monitor that one specific verb.
You are creating a hyper-focus, a cognitive laser beam aimed at one tiny mechanic. But what I find incredibly brilliant about this approach is that it goes beyond just a mental exercise. To truly intercept muscle memory, you have to introduce a physical trigger to the trap.
The physical trigger bridges the gap between the conscious mind and the unconscious body.
The strategy is this. Every single time you say your target phrase, every time you say he doesn't or she doesn't, you must perform a tiny conscious physical action.
Yes.
The simplest method is lightly tapping your leg with your finger, just a small physical tap. So as the words he doesn't leave your mouth, your finger taps your thigh. Let's dig into the neurology of this.
Yeah.
Why does tapping your leg magically fix a grammar error in your mouth?
Because fossilization is an unconscious, automatic physical action performed by the muscles of your vocal tract. By introducing a completely new conscious physical action, the tap on the leg at the exact millisecond the target language is being produced, you force the brain's somatosensory cortex to wake up.
You are sending a physical jolt to the system.
You are literally interrupting the automatic loop. The brain says, wait, why are we tapping our leg? Oh, right, we are paying conscious attention to the specific verb.
The physical sensation anchors your conscious noticing to the exact moment of speech production.
Exactly. Over a week of disciplined repetition, that tiny physical tap acts as a wedge. It breaks apart the rigid dinosaur bone and forces the brain to begin overwriting the bad habit with a new, correct pattern in your procedural memory.
It takes this highly abstract, frustrating concept of grammar and turns it into a tangible physical habit loop. Pick one fossil. Set a noticing trap. Use a physical tap. I genuinely think anyone listening could pick the one mistake they hate making the most and start doing this today.
It is a highly actionable framework. However, addressing the mechanics of the mistake is only solving half the problem.
Right.
There is a much deeper psychological layer here that we must confront. We have to ask the underlying question. Why did the speaker feel so deeply ashamed and panicked about saying he don't in front of their boss in the first place?
We are moving from the mechanics of language straight into the ego of the speaker.
Precisely. Why does a minor grammatical slip, which doesn't even impede understanding, cause such a visceral physiological reaction of shame?
It is because we deeply, often unconsciously, tie our linguistic perfection to our professional intelligence. The speaker in our scenario wasn't just worried about a verb. They were terrified that because they made a basic English mistake, their highly educated, highly competent colleagues would suddenly respect them less.
That is the core fear.
The internal monologue is, if I sound like a beginner in my speech, they will assume my professional skills, my strategic thinking, and my overall intelligence are at a beginner level too.
This highlights the central, agonizing conflict for many professionals, the conflict between grammatical perfectionism and communicative competence.
Grammatical perfectionism is incredibly toxic.
It is toxic because it sets an entirely artificial, impossible, and ultimately counterproductive standard. Grammatical perfectionism is the belief that unless your spoken language perfectly mirrors the rules of a written, edited textbook, you are failing. It is a mindset driven entirely by fear and ego.
But when we look at the real world, whether you are working in high tech, in finance, in medicine, or in the arts, what is the actual fundamental goal of opening your mouth to speak to another human being?
The goal is connection and clarity. The goal is the successful transfer of an idea, a concept, or a piece of data from your mind into the listener's mind. That is what linguists define as communicative competence.
Let's go back to our boardroom. The speaker said, he don't have the file. On a grammar test, yes, that is a failure. But communicatively, did the boss understand that the critical file was missing?
Absolutely. The boss completely understood the situation. The data transfer was 100% successful.
Think of it like this. Imagine you are tasked with delivering a pristine, solid gold bar to your boss. That gold bar represents your brilliant strategic idea, your crucial quarterly update.
Okay.
Now, you could deliver that gold bar inside a battered, dented, slightly ugly cardboard box. Or you could deliver a perfectly wrapped, absolutely flawless, beautifully constructed box that is completely empty.
An empty box with nice wrapping paper.
Right. Grammatical perfectionists spend all their time obsessing over the wrapping paper, while the gold bar sits undelivered on their desk. When you hand the boss the battered box with the gold inside, are they going to reject the gold because the cardboard has a dent in it? Of course not. They only care about the payload.
That is an excellent visualization of prioritizing the payload over the delivery vehicle. And there is a reality check here that should completely liberate anyone struggling with this anxiety.
Which is?
Native speakers deliver dented boxes constantly.
We do. Native speakers are not walking grammar textbooks. We start sentences, completely lose our way, change our minds halfway through, and finish with a subject that doesn't match the verb.
We frequently use constructions that are technically incorrect. A massive percentage of native speakers will walk into a room and say, "There's a lot of people here," instead of the grammatically required, "There are a lot of people."
And why do they do that? Because native speakers instinctively prioritize speed, rhythm, and flow over textbook perfection. Their primary unconscious objective is maintaining the momentum of the social interaction and transferring the data as efficiently as possible.
They are not checking the manual. They are just driving the car.
Which brings up the immense psychological and professional cost of perfectionism. When you fall into the trap of grammatical perfectionism, you aren't just making yourself anxious. You are actively degrading your ability to communicate.
You are paying a massive toll. You are sacrificing your charisma, your authority, and your natural personality.
Explain the mechanics of that. How does wanting to speak correctly actually strip away my personality?
Think back to the cognitive load we discussed. If 50% of your available brain power is acting as a frantic internal grammar checker, pre-monitoring every word before it leaves your mouth, scanning the horizon for fossilized errors to avoid, agonizing over whether to use the preposition in or on, you have virtually no cognitive bandwidth left for the elements that actually make you an engaging, persuasive speaker.
So you have no bandwidth left for eye contacts, for reading the room, for modulating your tone, or for showing actual passion for the topic.
Precisely. Furthermore, this constant exhaustive self-monitoring drastically raises what linguist Stephen Krashen famously called the affective filter.
The affective filter.
The affective filter is essentially an invisible neurological wall constructed of anxiety, self-consciousness, and fear of judgment. When your cortisol is high and your affective filter goes up, your natural personality is trapped behind it. You begin to sound robotic, hesitant, and entirely disconnected from your audience, regardless of how technically perfect your verbs might be.
Wow.
You sacrifice your warmth and your human connection on the altar of grammatical correctness.
So by dedicating all your mental energy to ensuring the cardboard box is perfectly wrapped, you become incredibly boring to listen to.
Yeah.
The pursuit of perfection literally destroys the connection.
Yeah.
So what is the alternative mindset? How do we escape the affective filter?
We must embrace a concept that provides a massive paradigm shift, the standard of good enough English.
Good enough English means that if the message lands, if the gold bar is delivered, it is good enough.
Yeah.
Now, to be clear, this is not an excuse to be lazy or to stop improving.
No, not at all.
The strategy is bifurcated. You relentlessly fix your fossils in the background. You use the noticing traps. You do the physical finger tapping. You put in the hard work during your practice time. And this is the critical pivot. When you are live on stage, when you are in that high-pressure meeting, you actively turn the internal grammar checker off. You give yourself permission to let it fly.
You trust the neurological work you have done in the background, and you focus 100% of your cognitive bandwidth on the payload and the people in the room. You aggressively prioritize connection over perfection.
I want everyone listening to do something right now to really lock this in. Think about a specific grammar mistake or a pronunciation quirk that you are deeply personally embarrassed by. We all have one. Take a second and picture that mistake. Feel that little spike of shame in your chest that it usually brings up. Got it. Okay. We are going to overwrite that feeling right now.
Yeah.
I am going to say an affirmation, and I want you to say it out loud with me. Let the truth of it actually sink in. My English doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to connect.
Such a powerful phrase.
Say it again with conviction. My English doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to connect.
If you truly internalize that philosophy, it fundamentally changes your physical posture in a room. It removes the fear of the dented box and lowers the affective filter entirely.
It is a massive relief.
Yeah.
So we have reframed our mindset. We understand the mechanics of auditory loading screens. We know how to set noticing traps for our fossils. And we are committed to connection over perfection. The final piece of the puzzle is implementation.
Putting it all together.
How do we actually build these new neurological pathways into our daily routine without it becoming a massive burden?
We integrate it into an existing low-friction daily habit. The most effective systems are the ones that require very little activation energy.
Let's assume you already have a very basic 15-minute daily language routine in place. Say 10 minutes of audio shadowing in the morning. For those who don't know, shadowing is when you listen to a podcast or an audiobook and you try to speak out loud, repeating exactly what the speaker is saying, mirroring their rhythm and pronunciation almost exactly at the same time they are saying it.
It's a great exercise.
You do this for 10 minutes while you are making your morning coffee. Then you spend 5 minutes doing spaced repetition flashcards on your commute to work. It's simple, it's 15 minutes, and it works.
It is an excellent baseline routine. But we are going to introduce a habit upgrade. And the beauty of this upgrade is that it requires absolutely zero extra time.
I love zero extra time.
We are not changing the duration of the habit. We are radically changing the methodology.
This upgrade focuses entirely on those 10 minutes of morning audio shadowing. We are adding a new rule to the game, and it is brutally strict. Tomorrow morning, when you are shadowing the audio, a failure is going to occur.
It is inevitable.
You are going to stumble over a complex word. The speaker will speed up, your tongue will get tied, and you will completely lose the thread of the sentence.
Failure is a necessary and guaranteed feature of the shadowing process. It means you are pushing the boundaries of your procedural memory.
Exactly. But here is the new rule. When that failure happens tomorrow morning, you are strictly forbidden from doing two things. Number one, you are absolutely forbidden from pausing the audio. You cannot stop the tape. Number two, you are forbidden from going silent.
You are intentionally removing all of your psychological safety nets.
No pausing to comfortably regroup, and no retreating into the vacuum of dead silence. So if your brain just crashed, you can't hit pause and you can't be quiet, what do?
You must immediately deploy the tool we installed earlier. You must deploy an auditory loading screen out loud, in real time, over the audio.
Let's visualize the mechanics of this.
Yeah.
You are shadowing a fast-paced business deep dive. You are repeating the words, doing great, and suddenly you completely bungle a sentence. Instead of freezing, you immediately say out loud, well, the thing is, and you say it right over the top of the speaker. Then, the millisecond your brain recovers, you jump right back into the shadow, catching whatever word the speaker is on next.
This is a profoundly effective neurological exercise. It operates on the same principles as stress inoculation training used by first responders.
Why is it so effective? Why force this chaotic, messy moment during what is supposed to be a peaceful morning practice?
Because you are actively simulating the cognitive stress of a high-pressure environment in the safety of your own kitchen. You are deliberately building the exact muscle memory required for survival. Think about it. In a real boardroom, you cannot hit pause on your CEO.
No, you definitely cannot.
You cannot ask the room to freeze for 10 seconds while you frantically search for a verb. The conversation moves forward relentlessly.
Just like the audio track, it doesn't care that you stumbled. It just keeps going.
Exactly. By forcing yourself to react to a linguistic failure, not with panic and silence, but with a smoothly deployed filler phrase, you are rewiring your nervous system. You stumble, you deploy the loading screen to confidently hold the floor, and you catch the train of thought again without ever triggering the cortisol spike that causes the blue screen of death.
You are building massive resilience into your conversational stamina.
You are literally training yourself to fail gracefully.
You are training your brain to keep the car rolling even when the engine sputters. So that is your practical mission. Tomorrow morning, when you inevitably stumble during your practice, you do not pause, you do not freeze. You deploy the loading screen. Let's make that commitment out loud right now. Repeat it with me. When I stumble tomorrow, I will use a loading screen.
If you do that consistently, neuroplasticity guarantees that the next time you lose your train of thought under the bright lights of a real meeting, your brain won't panic. It will bypass the freeze response entirely and automatically reach for the tool it has practiced using every single morning.
You will smoothly dress up your hesitation and maintain your absolute authority.
It becomes second nature.
This has been a deeply paradigm-shifting exploration today. Let's trace the arc of exactly what we have uncovered. We started with the visceral terror of the high-pressure blank out, that catastrophic system crash that leaves us paralyzed in a vacuum of silence.
We established that in the rhythm of human conversation, silence is a void that listener assumptions will rush to fill, and under pressure, those assumptions are rarely in your favor.
Because we didn't just accept the freeze response. We looked at the mechanics of fluent speech and discovered auditory loading screens. We abandoned the formal public speaking myth that our signs of weakness, and we upgraded our software to sophisticated phrases like, let me think about how to phrase this. We learned how to manipulate time, hold the floor, and give our overloaded working memory a crucial vacation.
We learned to intentionally control the pause.
Then we tackled the incredibly stubborn problem of fossilization. We realized that our brains are efficiency machines, perfectly willing to build permanent neural superhighways for bad grammar as long as it helps us survive a conversation.
And we accepted the hard truth that slow, declarative workbook knowledge will never save us in the lightning-fast arena of live speech.
Which is why we embraced Richard Schmidt's noticing hypothesis. We learned that to rewrite procedural muscle memory, we must intercept the neural signal before or during the act of speaking.
We learned to set the noticing trap.
We pick one single fossil, ignore every other mistake, and use a physical tap on the leg to jolt the somatosensory cortex, waking the brain up and physically interrupting the automatic pathway. It's a tangible, bodily solution to a mental block.
And perhaps most fundamentally, we confronted the toxic, ego-driven mindset of grammatical perfectionism. We explored how obsessing over textbook rules floods our system with cortisol, skyrockets our affective filter, maxes out our cognitive load, and strips us of the very charisma and warmth that makes communication effective.
We chose to embrace the dented box. We realize that communicative competence, the successful delivery of the gold bar, is the only true metric of success. We gave ourselves the profound grace of good enough English, trusting our background practice while ruthlessly prioritizing human connection when we are on stage.
And finally, we integrated all of this into a stress-inoculating daily habit upgrade, practicing our loading screens under the relentless pressure of non-stop audio shadowing.
It is a comprehensive, neurologically sound system for navigating the messy reality of spoken language.
It really is.
And I want to leave you with some real encouragement. Confronting your language ego is an incredibly difficult thing to do. It takes genuine courage to willingly stumble out loud, to tap your leg when you make a mistake, and to let go of the deep-seated desire to sound flawless. But by doing this, you are actively upgrading your brain's operating system. You should be incredibly proud of your good enough English today.
The pursuit of perfect communication is a myth. The reality is a journey of continuous, messy, and beautiful progress.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. A question that builds on everything we have unpacked today. We spent a lot of time discussing how native speakers constantly prioritize speed and social rhythm over textbook grammar. We talked about how they intuitively utilize loading screens, filler words, and discourse markers to mask their own constant mental processing delays and errors.
Right, they do it all the time.
If all of that is scientifically true, if native speakers are out there constantly making mistakes, dropping subjects, and using filler phrases just to survive their own daily conversations, is the concept of a perfect native speaker standard actually just a massive collective illusion? Is this standard of perfection that we torture ourselves over just a phantom? A standard created entirely by written, heavily edited text, completely divorced from the messy, spontaneous biological reality of actual human speech. And if that perfect standard doesn't actually exist in the real world, who exactly are we trying to impress when we demand absolute perfection from ourselves? Keep diving deep, keep speaking your truth, dense and all, and we will see you next time.